In the 1950s, at a time when American television was still black and white and rigid, a blonde-haired man stepped onto the stage of the Lawrence Welk show holding an accordion and brought the entire room to its feet with finger speed that seemed almost impossible. Audiences thought it was simply an entertaining performance. But few knew that behind that moment stood a man who had once nearly lost the ability to walk after being struck by polio as a child. Myron Floren grew up in the freezing farmlands of South Dakota, where illness could steal not only a person's health, but easily an entire future. For years, he had to relearn how to walk step by step, while the accordion was originally seen as nothing more than a way to help strengthen his weakened hands again. No one imagined that bulky instrument would one day turn a farm boy into one of the most recognizable faces on American television. But Myron Floren's life was never simply a poor boy rises above hardship story. While America viewed him as the cheerful symbol of wholesome family entertainment, he himself became trapped inside that impossibly perfect image for decades. No scandals, no rebellion, no loud public tragedy, and because of that, almost nobody ever wondered who he truly was once the stage lights faded. Behind the lively sound of that accordion was a man who spent his entire life hiding his loneliness behind a smile. Myron Floren was born in 1919 in South Dakota, growing up in a Norwegian immigrant farming family where life moved according to the rhythm of labor and weather more than personal choice. A crowded household, repetitive daily work, and an environment with little room for ambiguity, all of it created a foundation in which maintaining stability rather than pursuing change became instinctive. Music did not come into his life as the result of some sudden discovery. Before touching the accordion, he had studied piano, but it was not something that truly held him. It was not until the age of 6, when his father brought home a mail-order accordion purchased for $10, that a different movement began. There was no formal instructor, no traditional method. He worked through each key and each note on his own, repeating the same exercises for hours every day. Those practice sessions had no audience, no clearly defined goal, only a rhythm sustained long enough to become habit. Then, from small spaces, local fairs, community gatherings, he slowly began to appear, not as an artist, but as part of ordinary communal life. But what truly shaped that path was not those early performances. It was a limitation that arrived very early in his life. As a child, Myron Floren contracted rheumatic fever, leaving lasting damage to his heart. It was not a dramatic shock that unfolded in a single instant, but a prolonged change that forced his body to function under new conditions. Things that once could be done naturally, running, physical labor, strenuous movement, gradually became restricted. From that point on, the choices that followed were no longer entirely choices. During his recovery, the accordion ceased to be merely a musical instrument. It became part of a form of therapy, a way to keep his body functioning without pushing his heart beyond its limits. The pulling and pushing of the bellows, the constant coordination between both hands, the breathing that had to adjust to every musical phrase, all of it formed a type of controlled movement. There was no room for improvisation, no space for carelessness. Every motion had to be precise, because the slightest disruption in rhythm would cause the body to react immediately. From then on, practice was no longer a habit that could be changed. It became a daily requirement, with almost no exceptions. The hours spent with the instrument did not feel like learning a new skill, but more like maintaining a necessary condition so the body would not fall behind. Progress, if it existed at all, happened very slowly. No dramatic leaps forward, no moments of suddenly becoming better. Only gradual accumulation through endless repetition, sustained long enough for the body and the sound to begin aligning with each other in a stable way. Out of that process, a different kind of discipline emerged, one that did not come from the ambition to become an artist, but from the fact that he was not allowed to stop. Endurance did not come from trying to overcome limits. And the control that later became the defining mark of his playing style was not the product of performance itself, but the consequence of adjusting every small detail to keep things from exceeding what his body could allow. Over time, none of this created a dramatic turning point that could easily be named. Instead, it became a quiet foundation, an internal structure strong enough to carry him through the rest of his life. At Augustana College, Myron Floren did not separate studying from working. During the day, he attended classes, carrying with him coursework that was not directly connected to music, then leaving the classroom in time for his broadcast shift at radio station KSOO. On the air, he appeared under the name The Melody Man, starting precisely on time, ending cleanly, keeping the program within its assigned duration. Afterward, he returned to teaching accordion lessons, sitting across from students, adjusting hand positions, correcting timing, asking them to repeat short passages over and over until no mistakes remained. The work unfolded in a clear cycle. Mornings began with classes, afternoons were spent preparing radio programs, evenings were devoted to broadcasting, and nights returned once again to the instrument. There was no stretch of time long enough to separate himself from music. Each day followed the one before it, without producing an immediately visible breakthrough, but steadily preserving his skill. When the United States entered World War II, Myron Floren applied for military service like most men of his generation. The examination followed the usual procedure: medical checks, physical evaluations, the final confirmation process. The conclusion came briefly and directly. The heart damage from his childhood made him unfit for service. There was no prolonged waiting period, no opportunity for reconsideration or adjustment. His application was rejected immediately. That decision did not create an emptiness that could easily be filled. While men his age departed in the same direction, Floren returned to the unfinished routines waiting for him: classes, radio studios, small performances. But instead of remaining there permanently, he joined USO entertainment groups. Within a short time, he left America and traveled through Europe with touring performers. The performance schedule followed no fixed route. Locations changed constantly, depending on military units and the practical conditions of each area. Some performances took place on temporary stages built from rough wooden frames under basic lighting. Others moved into small halls where audience members sat shoulder to shoulder, still wearing military uniforms. Preparation time was often measured only in hours. Equipment was assembled quickly, checked briefly, and the program began as soon as everything was ready. Under those circumstances, Floren's role did not change from one location to another. He began at the scheduled moment, maintained a steady tempo throughout the performance, adjusted the pressure of his hands so the sound would not break apart in spaces never designed for music. When the program ended, he stepped off stage, packed away the instrument, and moved on to the next destination. The cycle of travel and performance repeated continuously, without any pause long enough to separate him from the work itself. When World War II ended, Myron Floren returned to America without going back to any fixed stopping point. He moved to St. Louis, a larger environment than the one he had known before, but also one that demanded a different way of working. There, he joined the group the Buckeye Four, taking part in live performances and local radio programs. The work did not unfold along one clear axis, but spread across multiple directions at once. Group performances, radio appearances, regional television programs, and continued accordion instruction at the St. Louis College of Music. Each role served its own function, but none of them was large enough to define his entire position. The radio broadcasts provided consistent visibility, yet their reach remained regional. Local television programs created additional opportunities to appear, but not long enough to establish a clearly recognizable image. Teaching kept his income stable, while also forcing him back to the fundamental principles of the instrument: posture, hand pressure, sound control, repeated through every student and every lesson. By this stage, Floren's technical skill had already been established. He played solidly, maintained strong control, and delivered consistency in performance. But those qualities still existed within a limited range. There was no program large enough to carry him beyond the local scene. No obvious breakthrough positioned him within the industry. The work continued, opportunities still appeared, but everything remained inside an undefined trajectory, a prolonged state rather than a true transition. In 1950, during a music night at the Casa Loma Ballroom in St. Louis, Myron Floren was in the audience while Lawrence Welk's orchestra was performing. He was not part of the program that evening. But when Welk noticed there was an accordion player in the crowd, he invited him onto the stage, a decision made spontaneously in the atmosphere of the performance itself, without preparation or prior arrangement. Floren stepped forward with his instrument and began playing Lady of Spain, a familiar piece but executed with remarkable speed and precision. From the very first phrases, the tempo was established clearly, the main melody line held together seamlessly, while the rapid note runs remained distinct and unbroken. His right hand moved densely and continuously, while the left maintained a stable foundation. The push and pull of the bellows were controlled evenly, so the sound never lost control inside the large hall. As the piece moved into its climax, the density of notes increased without collapsing, and the ending closed sharply, exactly on time. The audience reaction began during the performance itself, applause breaking through the transitional passages, then swelling louder when the piece ended. In a setting accustomed to carefully arranged performances, that appearance created a clear distinction in speed, precision, and total control of the number. Immediately after the show, Welk kept Floren backstage and offered him a place in the orchestra. The decision was made that same evening without a prolonged trial period. From that moment on, Floren left behind the limits of local performance and entered a far broader cycle of touring and broadcasting. Lady of Spain became a signature piece he would continue performing many times afterward, preserving the same entrance, the same rise toward the climax, and the same sharp ending. And from one appearance that had never been part of the plan, the entire direction of his life was established on the spot. After the night at Casa Loma Ballroom, Myron Floren entered the Lawrence Welk Orchestra and immediately blended into the demanding schedule of a professional touring band. One bus trip followed another across different cities. Stage setup in the afternoon, performances at night, departure again the next morning. The spaces changed constantly: ballrooms, auditoriums, temporary stages, while the program itself remained tightly controlled by predetermined time slots, set lists, and running order. On stage, Floren held the position of principal accordionist. His role began with concise opening passages that established a clear tempo, then guided the orchestra through transitions with stable bellows control. Numbers like Lady of Spain were repeated through countless performances, each one preserving the same structure: a fast opening, increased note density in the middle section, and a sharp conclusion. Large halls demanded sound that traveled directly, without breaking apart, without slipping out of rhythm. He adjusted the pressure of his hands according to each venue, maintaining clarity even when the orchestra intensified behind him. Backstage, the work expanded further. Floren monitored the running order, reminded performers of stage entrances, and helped reorganize details whenever schedules changed from one location to another. These responsibilities gradually shaped his role as an internal assistant within the orchestra, not something printed on posters, but something that determined how smoothly an entire performance operated. While Welk handled the overall direction, Floren maintained precision at the level of details: timing, transitions, musical cues. Within that lineup, two accordions coexisted. Welk remained the orchestra leader, while Floren handled the heavier technical passages and the fast solo sections. Their occasional duets followed a clear division of roles. One held the foundation, the other drove the climax forward. That arrangement continued through performance after performance, creating a stable balance between the image of leadership and the performing energy at the front of the stage. In 1955, the Lawrence Welk Show began airing nationwide on ABC. The studio was built around a fixed layout, the orchestra arranged in a semicircle, the center reserved for the host, camera angles pre-positioned to shift between wide shots and close-ups. Key lights were directed straight at the front row. Secondary lighting maintained the background, and every position was calculated in advance so that once the cameras rolled, the image required no further adjustment. Myron Floren stood within that formation, shoulder straps adjusted to the correct height, the bellows opening into rhythm the moment the on-air signal lit up. The first measures came out cleanly, the sound entering the microphones without distortion or echo, remaining full inside the acoustically controlled studio space. The weekly broadcast schedule forced every component to adhere tightly to timing. Each episode was clearly divided: opening, transitions, vocal and instrumental numbers, solo sections, closing segment. Before recording came rehearsals with stopwatches placed on the control podium. Floren received cues from backstage, stepped onto the exact marks taped onto the floor, and carried each segment through its assigned duration. His solo sections were positioned at moments designed to drive the program's momentum forward, after vocal performances, before scene transitions, or in the middle portion to maintain energy across the show. When necessary, he stood beside Lawrence Welk to keep time for the orchestra, watching the cue board and signaling entrances and exits with short, efficient gestures. At times, he held a microphone himself, delivering brief lines to return the program to the proper timing before the music resumed. Behind the stage, signal boards were mounted beside the entrance doors. Indicator lights, hand signals, and performance order were clearly marked. Costumes were changed quickly between segments, instruments checked before every appearance on air. The breaks between performances were measured in seconds. Every adjustment happened within the narrow backstage space where each position already had an assigned person responsible for it. Floren kept his eyes on the signals, crossed the stage mark at the correct moment, and exited when the lights shifted, never allowing himself to miss the camera frame. In familiar performances like Lady of Spain, the presentation was tightly preserved: a concise opening, increased density in the middle section, a sharp conclusion. Cameras shifted from wide shots to close-ups to capture the rapid movement of his right hand and the motion of the bellows. The orchestra behind him maintained a firm foundation while the melody line moved directly forward, preserving clarity even at high speed. The sound was balanced specifically for the studio environment. Television demanded greater cleanliness and sharper definition than touring stages. The studio audience applauded at precisely timed moments. Viewers at home recognized the number from the very first measures. Outside the studio, American music was changing rapidly. Rock and roll spread across the country. Large-scale stages transformed performance styles. Electronic equipment took dominance. Welk's program maintained its original structure: orderly formations, clear staging, performances aimed at family audiences. The contrast appeared directly on television. Within that framework, Floren pushed the technical side of the accordion to the level of sharpness necessary to keep brightness within the show, without disrupting the familiar style audiences already knew. The cycle of broadcasting, touring, and returning to the studio repeated continuously. Trips across America alternated with recording weeks, bringing the raw energy of live performance before returning to the studio and resuming the familiar process. Viewers tuned in at the same time slot each week, recognized his position within the orchestra, waited for his solo section, remembered the way he entered and the way he ended. Over the years, his name became inseparably linked with the program. His role was established through things that happened on time, in the correct place, repeated with high precision inside a schedule that continued for years. In 1971, the Lawrence Welk Show left the national network system and entered syndication. Local stations picked up the program according to their own broadcast schedules, redistributing it across different markets. The recording schedule inside the studio maintained its familiar rhythm. The broadcast schedule expanded outward through the map of local stations. Viewer numbers remained high, with many weeks reaching tens of millions of people. Inside the familiar television frame, Myron Floren continued to hold his place. The orchestra entered formation, cameras were positioned at the correct angles, the cue board lit up. His solo sections were inserted at points designed to sustain the program's energy, after vocal numbers, before transitions, or in the middle segment to maintain the overall rhythm. Pieces like Lady of Spain appeared in recurring cycles, with the same structure preserved every time: concise opening, increased density in the middle passage, sharp ending. Each television appearance repeated the same motions with high precision. Each touring performance carried that same presentation onto stages with different lighting and spaces, while still maintaining consistency. Behind the stage, everything followed familiar routines. Costumes were prepared according to performance order, instruments checked before airtime, the duration of every segment finalized with stopwatches. Transitions between performances were measured in seconds. Hand signals and indicator lights coordinated entrances and exits. Floren watched the cue board, crossed the stage mark at exactly the right moment, and carried his section through the full allotted duration. Internally, he continued handling support responsibilities, maintaining timing during transitions, reminding performers of entrances, ensuring the show matched the broadcast slots of each local station. Outside the familiar frame of the program, the landscape of American music was changing dramatically. Large concert stages expanded, electrically amplified sound systems pushed intensity higher, and performance styles moved toward a more direct form, emphasizing force and immediate audience interaction. Within that environment, Lawrence Welk's orchestra retained its familiar structure: compact formations, clearly layered performances, polished imagery suited for family television. Against that backdrop, Myron Floren's accordion work was placed at the points designed to bring brightness into the program: rapid note runs, concise transitions, sound that moved directly and clearly, maintaining sharpness within the studio mix. Behind the cameras, the work rhythm was maintained through precise details. Recording schedules organized in blocks, performance segments divided to fit the timing requirements of local stations, control boards monitoring every entrance and exit cue. Floren moved between positions according to the arranged order, bringing his sections in at the exact intended moment and ending cleanly to match the broadcast frame. Touring schedules continued between recording sessions, keeping the orchestra active, carrying the energy of live stages back into the studio, and then channeling that energy into the television frame. The connection between the performer and the program was maintained in this way, without needing to change, yet preserving the full precision already established with every appearance. In 1977, while American dance floors were covered in disco lights, Myron Floren released the album Disco Polka. The recording preserved the familiar structure of polka arrangements, placing them over a steady 4-beat rhythm, adding percussion such as congas, and layering synthesizers to thicken the sound field. Familiar melodies like Beer Barrel Polka, Clarinet Polka, How High the Moon, and L'amour est bleu were rearranged around disco rhythms. Concise openings, steady pulse, rhythmic layers pushed forward in the middle sections to create bounce, then closed with clearly defined endings. The accordion still carried the melodic line, moving directly over the electronic rhythm foundation without changing the entrances and endings that had already become part of his stage habit. Inside the recording studio, the process was divided into layers. The rhythm tracks were recorded first to lock in the tempo, accompaniment added afterward, and the accordion recorded last to preserve the sharpness of the melody. The arrangements prioritized clarity, avoiding overlap and leaving enough space for the accordion to rise above the dense background. The method still followed the discipline he already knew, changing only the outer layer of sound. The album opened a new approach within an already existing framework, keeping polka as the core while placing it inside a disco context to connect with contemporary tastes. The recordings were played on radio stations and incorporated into live performances, allowing audiences to recognize familiar melodies within a different sonic frame. Even so, the response never developed into a major wave. The stage format of the Lawrence Welk Show remained unchanged, and Floren's television appearances continued following the established performance structure. Disco Polka documented an experiment that placed existing technical skill into a new current of popular music. The direction was tested, the method expanded, while the overall trajectory of his career remained unchanged. In 1982, the Lawrence Welk Show ended after more than 3 decades of continuous presence on American television. Inside the familiar studio, the final recording session unfolded exactly as it had for many years. The orchestra moved into position, the lights came on, the cue board ran, and the performances were completed within their full allotted time. There was no sudden disruption, only an ending already predetermined within the broadcast schedule. For Myron Floren, the end of the program was not simply the conclusion of a television show. Most of his professional activity over many years had been directly tied to this working rhythm. Weekly recording schedules, touring cycles between broadcasts, his performance and support role within the orchestra. Once the broadcast framework disappeared, the work cycle was interrupted. The familiar reference points, program timing, placement of performances, backstage coordination, no longer existed in the same form. The impact became visible in the organization of work afterward. Instead of a fixed schedule revolving around the studio, performances were reorganized into individual events and specific venues. Without a television platform maintaining weekly visibility before audiences, the connection with the public shifted toward live performances and other forms of appearance. The ending of the show marked the closing of a work system that had shaped the way he operated for many years. The technical skill, performance style, and work discipline all remained intact, but the context in which they were applied had changed completely. After leaving the structure of fixed television broadcasting, Myron Floren's working method expanded horizontally, stretching across touring routes and festival systems throughout the United States. His schedule became filled according to the seasons: indoor auditoriums at the beginning of the year, outdoor stages during summer, then cultural festival circuits in the fall. Certain stops returned in recurring cycles: Germanfest in Milwaukee, Norsk Høstfest in Minot, Strawberry Festival in Plant City, Wurstfest in New Braunfels, Polka Fest in Branson, each location maintaining its own organizational style, ranging from large stages with permanent sound systems to temporary spaces built inside festival grounds. At every location, everything unfolded according to a tightly controlled rhythm. Morning arrival, quick sound checks with local technicians, microphone adjustments for the accordion to preserve clarity in the upper range. Before performance time, the set list was reorganized according to the duration requested by organizers. Some venues allowed 45 minutes, others stretched beyond an hour. Once on stage, he established the tempo in the opening measures, maintained the flow of the program through concise transitions, and placed familiar pieces like Lady of Spain at the exact points needed to raise the energy of the hall. Rapid runs were pushed harder in the middle sections, creating bursts of intensity in open-air spaces. Endings closed sharply to allow immediate transition into the next number or the end of the show. The tours followed one another according to demanding schedules, some years reaching nearly 200 performance days. Between stops, he traveled with his instrument and personal equipment directly to the next venue without passing through any permanent central headquarters. Every stage demanded a different approach to sound. Enclosed halls required control of echo. Outdoor stages demanded stronger hand pressure so the sound could travel farther. Festival stages required fast openings to maintain the attention of constantly moving crowds. Those adjustments were made during short sound checks, then maintained consistently throughout the performance itself. Alongside the live stage work, he continued appearing in filmed productions. In 1986, he appeared in Kansas's music video, Can't Cry Anymore. bringing the image of the accordion into a production environment different from the television world he knew. Mobile cameras, editing built around the rhythm of the song, lighting designed scene by scene. The performance itself still preserved the familiar entrances and endings, placed now inside a different visual frame. Beyond touring and filming, he also hosted rebroadcast episodes of The Lawrence Welk Show on PBS, standing before the camera in the role of presenter, connecting old performances with new audiences. This work continued alongside his touring schedule, maintaining his television presence while the main body of his career shifted toward live performance. Throughout this entire period, every part of the work, touring, festivals, filming, hosting, existed as separate pieces, no longer contained within a single unified system. Audiences came from many different directions: longtime television viewers, festival attendees, people discovering him through video recordings. Maintaining the career depended on each specific performance, each stop along the schedule, each appearance before a new audience hall. Myron Floren's family life began through music lessons that took place with steady regularity. Inside a small room, he sat across from Berdine Kerner, setting the tempo for each piece, stopping to adjust hand positions, asking for repetition until the passage came out complete. The lessons gradually stretched a few minutes beyond their scheduled ending, then turned into meetings outside class hours, still revolving around the accordion, but no longer ending with practice exercises. That repeated presence over time kept the two of them sharing the same space longer than a music lesson required. There was no sudden change, only one meeting following another, preserving the same rhythm while adding moments never written into the schedule. By 1945, they married. No major event surrounded it, only a decision placed at the same moment his work was beginning to expand beyond familiar territory. 5 daughters were born one after another, bringing with them a rhythm entirely different from the stage, slower, quieter, independent from lights or broadcast schedules. While touring and recording calendars stretched across long routes, the home maintained its own separate pace. Myron Floren's returns were always brief, existing between trips, between recording sessions. Luggage was set down, meals placed on the table, conversations resumed where they had paused, then closed again when the schedule called him away. There were no grand milestones marking those arrivals and departures, only the repetition of short periods of time, enough to keep the connections from breaking apart. As the years passed and the family expanded into another generation, that space continued existing in its own way, a quiet world outside the stage. The children grew up without needing to step into the spotlight. Relationships were built without depending on performance imagery. Occasionally, the two worlds touched at very specific points, such as when Bobby Burgess, a member of the Lawrence Welk Show, became his son-in-law. But those intersections did not alter what had already formed long before. One side remained the fixed schedule of the stage, the other the rhythm of family life preserving its silence. While Floren's image on television became clearly defined, his position on stage, the way he entered rhythm, the way he ended, his family life did not move according to that same tempo. Performances continued according to schedule, tours followed one after another, and the time spent at home was divided into fragments. The bond was preserved inside those short periods, not through major moments, but through returns just long enough to keep everything from becoming disconnected. No major family crisis was ever publicly recorded. No event was brought into public view. This entire part of his life existed outside the frame, where there were no lights, no cameras, only a private life running parallel to his career. It was precisely this separation that kept the two sides from overlapping. One moving according to the fixed schedule of the stage, the other according to a rhythm independent from it. The final years of Myron Floren's life were not tied to a sudden withdrawal from the stage, but unfolded while he still maintained the performance rhythm he had always known. Touring schedules gradually decreased over time, but never stopped completely. He continued appearing at festivals and programs connected to him for many years, still opening with familiar measures, carrying pieces through transitions he knew by memory, then closing with the same concise endings as before. Alongside live performances, he also hosted rebroadcast episodes of The Lawrence Welk Show on PBS. In front of the camera, he introduced performances, connecting present audiences with programs recorded many years earlier. The role did not demand the same physical intensity as live stage work, but it still kept him inside the same familiar environment, where music, cameras, and audience memory continued meeting within the same frame. Myron Floren's health did not decline in a straight line. In the late 1970s, he underwent heart valve replacement surgery, a major operation directly connected to the damage that had followed him since childhood. After the surgery, performances resumed, but the way he stood beneath the stage lights began showing clear effects from his physical condition. Standing time was measured more carefully, the push and pull of the bellows distributed evenly to avoid strain, breaks between performances strictly maintained. In the years that followed, touring schedules became less dense than before. Travel routes were spaced farther apart, performance locations selected according to what his body could manage at a given moment. On stage, familiar songs still appeared at their proper moments, but the preparation behind them changed. Short sound checks, limited rehearsals, moving directly into performance once the signal was ready. Longer concerts were shortened to appropriate durations, preserving the key points before ending cleanly. By the final stage, treatment for colon cancer continued alongside his remaining activities, while his physical condition gradually imposed clearer limitations. Public appearances became less frequent. The distance between performances grew longer. There was never a formal announcement of retirement, but the list of scheduled performances slowly diminished season by season. Previously booked programs were reorganized. Some events shifted into shorter formats, with preference given to familiar venues. Throughout that entire process, the way he stepped onto the stage never changed in the ways audiences recognized first. He moved into the correct position, established the tempo, carried the performance through its chosen duration, and ended sharply. The adjustments happened behind the scenes, in the organization of schedules, preparation time, and the breaks between segments. The body imposed specific limits. The performances were reduced just enough to remain within them. On July 23, 2005, Myron Floren died in Rolling Hills Estates, California, at the age of 85, after a period of cancer treatment. The news was confirmed within his family and among those who had worked alongside him. There was no staged final appearance, no closing performance designed for farewell. Everything stopped within a private space, separated from what had once unfolded beneath stage lights. In the days afterward, local stations continued rebroadcasting the Lawrence Welk Show according to the familiar schedule. In certain time slots, his image still appeared in the same old position, standing within the orchestra, opening the bellows, carrying the melody through to completion. The reruns did not alter the structure of the program, did not slow the footage to mark the absence. The show simply continued through one performance after another, exactly as audiences had seen it for many years. On the stages once associated with him, set lists continued following the familiar order. Familiar melodies still played at festivals, inside the same spaces where he had once performed. No direct replacement existed for that position. Those who had once shared the stage with him continued the program, maintaining the tempo, carrying performances through opening, middle, and ending sections just as they had before. What remained continued existing through details that still repeated themselves. The broadcast time slots, the order of performances, the entrances and endings of each song, all of it continued exactly as before, while the man who had once kept those details connected no longer appeared within the same frame. Myron Floren's legacy did not appear in the form of a change that could be pointed to immediately. It existed in the fact that an instrument once associated mainly with small immigrant communities remained on national television long enough that it no longer seemed like an exception. Within that frame, the sound of the accordion no longer needed to be reintroduced or explained. It existed as something familiar, connecting different origins within the same audience space. His position within the larger system was never built as a separate center of attention. He did not stand apart in order to define the program, yet the responsibilities he carried were always placed exactly where they were needed to keep everything from drifting out of place. That stability did not create obvious highlights, but it kept the entire operation from breaking apart. Over time, it was precisely this kind of presence that defined his role. Not as an independent star, but as a part that became irreplaceable once placed in the correct position. Recognition came later, not attached to one explosive moment, but appearing gradually across many years, from cultural communities to professional organizations. The honors he received did not change the way he had worked, but they confirmed that what had been preserved quietly all along had indeed been seen. They did not create a new story. They simply closed a process that had lasted long enough to no longer require further proof. Looking back across the full trajectory of his life, the most striking thing does not lie in dramatic peaks, but in a life maintained according to the same principle from beginning to end. From the earliest music lessons to his final appearances, Myron Floren did not build his image through sudden transformations, but through the ability to remain with the same way of working for an extraordinarily long time. There was never a moment of destruction and reinvention, nor a departure long enough to become an event in itself. There was only a path maintained continuously, long enough that it no longer needed to be named. And when the frame finally faded out, what remained was not a single moment that could be separated from the rest. It existed within that very repetition itself, a sound that had once appeared so regularly that its absence could only be recognized through silence.